Hello, everyone. Good morning. I am not a professional coder. Um, However, that's what this is all about. You do not need to be a developer to actually build successful apps and actually have them deployed to your customers any longer. So this session is an hour long. What we are going to cover is all of the basics about building an application and deploying it. So this session is majorly going to tell you about how you can go ahead and create those bits and pieces of the application without having to do any deluge code. So let's move on. So the first question that we want to ask ourselves is, what really is a custom application? A custom application is basically an application that does not have something available out of the box in the market, right? So you do not have a product that's built to suit exactly your requirement. And since every business is unique, every business has a unique business process, it does not make sense to try to have that software kind of work for you, just kind of make it fit. But when you have the ability to go ahead and make software actually work for your business rather than have it the other way around. So when we look at custom app development, what are the actual barriers that prevent people from actually going in, building a custom application? So number one is that custom application development has often been time-consuming. And obviously, since it's time-consuming, we have developers on payroll, it is very, very expensive, right? So when you're looking to build a full-stack application, application development, especially custom application development, is very, very time-consuming and is very, very expensive. However, there's a new player in the market, and that is the low-code market. So the low-code market itself allows you to abstract a lot of the application development. So if you are going ahead and actually trying to build out an application, you no longer need to worry about all of the infrastructure to build the application, and that's what Zoho is all about, right? That's exactly what we're moving towards, and that's what the actual industry is moving towards. And it's not us that the ones who are saying this. We have our good friends over at Gartner and Forrester who believe that by 2020, almost 50% of the applications in the custom app development market are going to be in the low-code space, right? The reason why low-code is really, really growing, the reason why the market is expected to grow exponentially is because it gives you a productivity boost. At the end of the day, for a business, it is very, very important to ensure you are developing your application and being productive while doing it. You do not want to spend, say, 30 hours doing something that can be done in 15 minutes, because that is not profitable to the business, right? It is not profitable, even say to the developer. So what all low-code platforms basically allow you to do is focus on this part on the top, which is your business logic, and actually focus on what really, really matters there, and leave all of the heavy lifting onto these low-code platforms, say Creator in this case. Let's get into what Creator has to offer. Creator is Zoho's low-code custom application development platform, right? As we grow, Deluge powers a lot of the low-code bits of Creator, and that is what we're expecting to see move into the other bits. So when you talk about Zia, when you talk about chatbots, that's what we have. We call it Skill Creator. We call it, we have other stuff. When we move to Catalyst, we are actually giving you the ability to go down all the way onto our infrastructure layer and make a few changes there as well. But when it comes to the low-code layer, we will expose a lot of this functionality and this power through Deluge. You will be able to use, like I said, you'll be able to use Zia to create skills. You'll be able to use Deluge inside Click to actually create those chatbots as well. So let's look at Creator, right? Creator majorly has 5 components, and these 5 components are, when used in conjunction, allow you to come up with your business application. So the first component that we have is something that we call a form. A form is a basic input layer for Creator, and a form is also what helps you design your database, right? A page, a report, all of these are components that help you kind of represent this data in the format that you want. And a workflow, well, obviously, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, allows you to program business logic inside Creator, inside your application itself, right? The workflow bit that we're dealing with here is going to talk about how you can create these business workflows without having to write a single line of Deluge code at the moment. However, Deluge allows you to further extend the capability that we have on the workflows. So in case you're looking for custom integrations, if you're looking to write, say, do an integration with a legacy system, that is what Deluge can really, really help you with. The last bit that we have is the mobile component. What we're all going for is building cross-platform applications. The world is no longer at a point where we're using the applications only on your laptop. The world is moving towards mobile. Mobile usage is drastically increasing. And if your application is on the web and it is not available on the mobile, you are losing out not only the audience, you're losing out not only the accessibility, you are actually losing out on the one thing that's most important to a business, and that is productivity, right? And that's what a mobile allows you to do. Let's look at what we really need to get into before we start building out these forms and these reports. So the first thing that you need to do is to go ahead and build a data model. So a data model is a fancy way of saying what are your requirements, all right? What you are basically looking to do is structure your requirements in the form of how the data will be. So the first thing that you need to do is figure out what you really want. If you are from the agile space, these problem statements are the equivalent of a user story, which you might have written. But the idea that you basically have is take a pen and paper or open up, all right, use Writer instead, and write down who you are creating that particular module for, what do you expect it to do, and who is the person who's going to be accessing it. So let's take an example here, right? What do I want to do? Number one, very simple, create an online form. Who do I want it for? I want it for my sales team, right? What do I want it to do? I want it to collect some basic information, maybe about a lead, all right? That's the first step. Let's go and refine that a little further, right? Let's start now being a little more specific. When you say we're being specific, what exactly are we looking for? So going from a generic thing like an online form, let's get specific into what exactly we need. Do we need a report? Do we need a form? Do they need to input data? Do they need to view data, right? And this is the point where you define what component you need, and you also define what you want someone to enter in a form. When you're done with that, you will now start breaking that requirement down into something that we call objects. An object is basically a form, all right? Think of this as the name of a form. Someone might also call this an entity. So when you use the word entity, when we use the word object, it means the same thing. What we're talking about is basically a form, right? The next thing that you need to do is figure out the attributes. The attributes are basically just fields, all right? You need to know what information you need to have on that form. So you first figure out the form. Next, you figure out what fields you want on the form. Often you will have a point where you need to reference data between multiple forms, all right? If you have, say, a form which has got, let's say you have a database which has got country information, you do not want to have a drop-down with all that country information. That is just pointless because you now have to enter close to 180 countries, 200 countries again, right? So what we are doing at this point is creating something called a lookup, which is what we use inside Creator. It's called a lookup field. What you're basically doing is creating a link between two different objects or two different entities and relating that, all right? So in all of this, once you've figured out what you need, the objects or the entities, and the attributes that you need inside those forms, what you get to is a fancy-looking diagram like this, which is often called an entity relation diagram, right? Entity relationship or an ER diagram. So if a developer, or let's say a consultant for that matter, says, I need to make an entity relationship diagram, and I'm going to charge you $2,000 for it, you need to understand what he's doing, all right? So an entity relationship diagram, very simply, is what fields you need on the forms and how they relate to each other, right? This is one of the first steps that is involved in traditional database design. However, on Creator, you don't need to worry any further, because once you have the ER diagram, what you can do is very quickly move to the forms. When you move to the forms, it's as simple as dragging and dropping, right? So this is what Creator's form builder looks like, right? I'm going to go into the product, and I'm going to show you how exactly you can go ahead and build a form. I have a few pre-built forms for you so that you can take a look at them as well. But essentially what you are doing is creating a form based on the entity relationship diagram that you have. What we have here is what a traditional form builder looks like, and I'm going to go into the product now and show you how that actually is. So let's go to creator.zoho.com. when you open Creator, what you have is something of this sort, which is basically a dashboard for all of the applications you have on your workspace. So I have one application that's already built. I will go into edit mode for that. So let's get back to the form. And I have a form that's already built here. What I'm going to do is open the form builder and actually show you how that works. So this is how the form builder actually looks in the product. We already have a few fields that have been added here. What these fields are and what they do is something I will cover. But all you need to do to create a form, or let's say add a field in the form, is simply drag and drop. That's it. OK. Sometimes that doesn't work. So adding a field to a form is as simple as dragging and dropping, or in this case, double-clicking the field. And what you will actually be able to do now is have all of these fields set up for you. So getting back to the form builder, you've now very clearly decided what fields you want on the form, and you've gone and put them on the form. And so let's go over the actual fields that are there on the form builder. I will not spend too much time on what each field does. If you are a developer and you don't know what every field does here, I think we have a problem. But most of them are self-explanatory. There are a few that I will go over. So basic fields that we have are the name, email, the address, the phone number, a single line, and a multi-line field. All right? So think of the single line field as a simple field that accepts one line of data. All right? This is the equivalent of, let's say, your string characters in any traditional programming language. Multi-line is, let's say, multiple sentences. All right? Think of it as multiple single line fields put together. That's what a multi-line field is. I think name, email, address, and phone is very, very clear. We will not go over that. Let's look at the other ones. So a number field is basically a field that helps you put simple numbers there. This will allow you to add any sort of numbers that you require. All right? Majorly whole numbers, but you can also add, you can also display decimal, but you cannot really enter it. Right? So the date field is, again, self-explanatory. A date field, you can just select a date on it. It comes with a very nice drop. It has actually a very nice picker, so you can actually look at the UI level. You can select the list, select the date from the list available there. A drop-down field, I think, is self-explanatory. It's a form of a pick list. A radio is, again, a form of a pick list. And both of them are just different in their visual appeal, but they do exactly the same thing, is that they give you an option, and you can give that option to, let's say, a user on the form, and they can pick from one of the predefined options. All right? A multi-select field is, think of it as a specialized pick list, where you can actually put multiple selections of predefined options. All right? That's what a multi-select field is. A checkbox is, again, a type of pick list, but it gives you the ability to actually check all of the boxes that you want there, and you can select from any of the predefined options. That a decision box can only have two states, either true or false. It's the equivalent of a Boolean on Creator. All right? So a decision box will look like a checkbox. It has only one box there for you to check. So moving forward, a rich text field is basically, think of it as a multi-line field with the ability to do multiple formatting options. All right? That's what a rich text field is. You can actually go ahead and put an HTML code there on the rich text field and have it render, but you will not be able to have that on the actual multi-line field. Right? So percentage, a currency. The image field is actually pretty interesting, because the image field allows you to directly upload an image. If you're on a mobile device, the image field actually allows you to open your camera and capture the photographs. They have some specialized functionality on the mobile. Right? So a percentage field is basically just a percentage. A currency, I think, is self-explanatory. Let's look at decimal. A decimal allows you to take, so this is the equivalent of a float or a double, in case someone is trying to relate this to your earlier data types. And a date time field is just a specialized version of the date field with the ability to actually add time selection on it as well. So if you're looking to schedule stuff, if you're looking for an application that actually allows you to maintain, or if you're looking for a calendar view at any point of time, a date time field might actually be the best one for you, because that allows you to actually plot all of this over a period of time as well. Right? We have something called a timeline report, but then we also allow you to use the date time field on the calendar report as well. So the lookup allows you to create that relationship between two different entities. So if you want to relate data from one form to the other form, you're going to be using a lookup field. On a mobile device, you will actually be able to tap and then just use a signature. So a lot of people find this important when they're using an application where their delivery agent, service agent, needs to sign off on something that they received or a job completion. That's where a signature field is really, really helpful. So a file upload field, again, is just a way for you to basically upload any file, which might be on your mobile device or on your, say, laptop. So the audio and the video field are very new additions. They've come only in Creator 5. And what they allow you to do is basically record or upload a video or an audio. Both of these fields are more contextual on the mobile device because you can actually just open up your camera or open up your recording tool and then just snap all of these files, right? So the last type of fields that we have are called special fields, and a few of these are not functional in terms that they don't accept data, but that's what the section field is. A section field allows you to arrange different fields on the form in different sections. So you can actually create sections on the form and put multiple fields inside that section form. The add node fields is great if you want to display data on your form. The add nodes field can actually also take HTML, so you will be able to put an HTML there and have that render on the form itself. The users field basically allows you, so we haven't got to the concept of records yet, but think of someone adding a piece of data, and you now want to decide who owns that piece of data or that piece or that record that's there. What you can do is assign a user from the application using the users field to that record, and then that person essentially becomes the record owner. By default, in Creator, the person who adds the record is the one who owns the record. But if you add a users field in the form, it gives you the ability to assign that record to someone else as well. So the integration field is, I'd say, again, special, because what that allows you to do is basically connect data from another service that you have. The only difference here is the integration field allows you to basically look up into another application. So the way we have lookup allowing us to reference data between multiple forms, think of the integration field allowing you to look up into different applications or integrations that you have. You will not be able to push data using the integration field, but what you can do is basically reference data using the integration field. The first thing that you should have in mind is that your form is the equivalent of your database, right? There is no separate database that you're building. Whatever you build in the form are going to be the fields, and that is why we went over the ER diagram before, right? So your form is the equivalent of database. Whenever you create a form, a report is created by default, all right? So now the good question is, what is a report? A report is basically gives you the ability to visualize your data, right? And think of the report as just a view into your database, all right? Mind you, why I say the report is a view into your database is because you can actually delete the report, but the data will still remain in the form. I know this might be difficult for a lot of people if in case you have done, let's say, a form and database before, but here the form is the database. So even if you have one report and you delete the report, the form will still hold the data. Additionally, you can have multiple reports on one form itself, all right? So you will be able to have, say, a calendar report, a Kanban report, we'll go over what these are, or let's say even a list report based on one form or one database or one data itself, right? So the different types of reports that are available inside Creator is the list report, which is the default report that gets created whenever you create a form, right? The other ones are the Kanban type, the map report, a timeline and calendar, which is what I was talking about earlier, and obviously you have your charts, right? So this is what a report looks like. So when I go back to the product now, I'm actually going to go to the live mode of this and show you what the report or the form actually looks like in the live mode. You click the Access this application button, and this is what basically your form will look like. So you can see I have multiple, let's say, multiple fields added here. I have an email field. I have a drop-down field here. This is what we have, a subform. A subform is basically you have the option to embed a form inside a form. So if I click Add New, I can have multiple fields on this one field itself. So think of it as basically, essentially, it's just a form inside another form, right? So this is what a form looks like on the live mode. And let's go back and look at the associated report. If I click the All Registrations tab, you will see this sort of view. this view that we have, which shows you your data inside a report line by line, is what we call the list view. All right? This is the most basic view there is in Creator of a report. And when you create a form, this list view gets created by default. All right? You do not need to do anything to tie your data to the list report, to your form. Between the list report and your form, the link is automatically created. All right? And that's another advantage of what Creator offers, because anyone from the custom application development space, let's say using Oracle forms or something before, understands that you need to create these links between forms and the database separately. Right? Creator goes ahead and does that for you by default. So to come back and actually design, or let's say modify any of these reports, you come back to the product and you hit the edit mode of the product. And here, what we can do, so if I zoom in here, you see I have an option called edit this application. If I click edit this application, I will now come back to the edit mode of the application. Right? The edit mode of the application will basically allow me to configure what sort of view there is specific to that report. Or at the same time, what I can do is choose to go ahead and design part of that report by customizing it. So how you actually go ahead and customize this is by looking at the options on your right. We have two types of customizations. One is called the quick view, and the second is called the detail view. Right? So it says quick view and detail view. What the quick view and detail view basically mean is if I go to the report, this view by default, right, is called the quick view. If I click a record, this is called the detail view. All right? What I can do is go back to the application and in here, customize the report. If I want to change the layout, I can just change the layout here, decide how the layout should be. Once I think this is good, just click OK, click access the application, and the general layout for that report will just change. So when you say customization on the report, what we're talking about is actually making a lot of customization on the UI. Your data source will remain intact. If I want to go back, I could probably just switch back to, let's say, a list report, or switch back to a different layout, and all of my data will just remain intact there itself. So if I just select it, this is my list report again, and you see I am back. So you might need to go change the fields, all of that. The option is there. But all of your data will remain on the form, which is why you can actually create multiple reports associated to one form itself. Right? So the different kinds of reports that are possible on Creator by using the same data source is a map report. You can see that this will, so mind you, every report that you create, every component you create on Creator on the web app translates to your mobile app or to a tablet app directly. So if you create a map report here, you can actually go ahead and access that over mobile as well. So the first type is the map report. The other types that we have are simple charts that you can use, or we also have a Kanban view. So a Kanban view basically allows you to look at all of the data that you have in a staged format. Kanban was originally founded in the manufacturing space by Toyota, and that has now just carried over into project management throughout. So if you ever have a staged view, say if you're doing delivery for something, let's say you're managing a fleet of operations, or you have service agents or sales agents doing a set of operations, they're obviously going to be at different stages, and that is what a Kanban view can be used for. The last type of report that we have here is what we call a calendar or a timeline report, and this is what a calendar or timeline report looks like. By default, all of these will be gray. You can actually use something that we have called conditional formatting, or you can basically go into the filters on this and then figure out how to add colors so that they, let's say based on a set of criteria, they will show up in a particular color, right? The idea is just to show you that you can represent the same data that you have in multiple formats without having to write a single piece of additional code. You do not need to do anything to create a calendar report. You do not need to do anything at all to create a map report. And you can choose to alternate between these reports on the same data set at any given point of time. So let's say one fine day you don't like your map report, just switch back, right? There's no problem. So that is what a report allows you to do. Just to sum up, a report will allow you to visualize all of this data that you have added through the form. The link between the report and the form is created by default, and you can have different types of reports, multiple reports on one form itself. So on one data set, you can have different types of reports, right? So let's move on to the third component that we have, which is called pages. So a page is basically nothing but a custom view, all right? By default, the form is available in a particular format for you to use. We go to the report is available in a particular format for you to use. When you want to have a very, very custom view, when I'm thinking custom view, what I'm actually thinking is dashboard, right? You might want to have a business dashboard to actually look at all of the data that you have in one view itself. And that is what a page basically allows you to do, right? So if you're looking to manage all of your business, get let's say a bird's eye view on all of the data, or let's say how data is flowing inside your organization, you can go ahead and build yourself a dashboard. So it could be something as simple as managing a business, or when basketball fans get extremely excited, they want to track their scores on a dashboard as well. Mind you, this is actually a real dashboard that someone in the creator team built. So you can actually use a dashboard, or let's say create this custom view for anything that you like. So the page concept, again, when you think custom view, you're thinking a lot of code, again, right? But that's what the creator advantage is that we give you the ability to do everything with one, a no-code layer, second, with a low-code layer, all right? So there's no code and there's low code, and that's what Creator is all about. So we give you the ability to actually go ahead and create any of these pages that you want with a simple drag and drop interface, all right? So you can actually look at the panels on your left. You can select any of the options that you have on the left and drag and drop them into the actual page builder area. I will give you a demo of this. You will actually be able to drag and drop any of these inside the page builder area and kind of get your page ready without, again, having to write a single line of code. Just one thing, the double click doesn't work on this. So let's actually go back to the dashboard that we have here and see how we can customize that. So if everyone remembers, this was the dashboard that we saw on the live mode. So on the live mode, this dashboard is there. The data is already available in the reports that you've built. The data is already available in the forms that you have. And to go back and actually build this is you just open the page builder, and what you can do is look at the options on the left. So you have panels, you have charts. You can embed the forms and reports and the charts that you have built right within here. And I can just drag and drop whatever piece I want and decide how that will work. So I can drag drop that here, either choose to have static text, choose to have, say, some data computed and pulled from let's say from our report, and then just crunched and added here in real time. So all of what you are seeing out here, all of these functions that you see, they're all just referencing data from some report or some form inside the application. So all of your dashboards now are basically live, and you can actually embed any of your map reports, or let's say your another form on this page itself. So if you want to see how much this can be customized, I can just go drag, drop more between them, and you see that we can just keep adding as many as we want, as long as they make sense. So maybe sometimes I just want to do one, let's say, between them, and yeah. So my point is that gives you that sort of customizability that you require. All of these are, though, in one format. You can configure them, add some design. So let's say you want to go ahead and, let's say, change the color of the card. Okay. Yeah. Let's say you want to change the color of the card, or let's say you want to change how any of these interact with one another. You can do that. And what you can also do is, where the code junkies are going to have a ball, is learn something called ZML, which allows you to basically build these components using ZML itself. So what is ZML? Okay, before we get into what ZML is, let's just go back and show you how pages were built before Creator 5 and before we actually got the no-code builder out. So if you had to build any page, you had to go through this every single time. I mean, I'd go through it, but if I had an option, I'd just choose a quicker way, right? So what we wanted to do, what we actually realized was, with the no-code builder, we make it productive, but then there are still times where we feel, or let's say we know that the developer has felt restricted, and they actually wanted to put that custom code in there, right? So Creator allows you to basically use HTML and deluge within these pages. At the same time, use a no-code builder if you choose to, right? When we put in HTML, we realized that it works great on the web, But as things move to mobile, your pages that you're putting with HTML aren't really native, right? They do not leverage the native functionality that a mobile offers. And that is what ZML offers you. ZML is an abstraction over HTML, but the advantage of using ZML instead of using HTML is that every single line of code that you write on ZML will render properly on mobile, on tablet, on the web, exactly the same way, and give you the same user experience. Right? That's basically what ZML offers you in addition to HTML. So with pages, what you can see is that we take only a few minutes to go ahead and design these dashboards. What the creator advantage really is, every single component that you build on the web is available for you to use on every single platform, be it a mobile, be it a tablet. We ensure we do the heavy lifting for you. I mean, we are updated on how the changes in the Apple space and the Google space keep up. So if you're using iOS or you're using Android, maintaining those applications itself is a task. Here, you don't even need to worry about it because we're actually doing all the heavy lifting to ensure that we are relevant on every single platform that we build, right? So we're done with 3 components now. So we're done with the forms, the reports, and the pages. So the last component that we have is the workflows. And the workflows that I'm talking about here are not the workflows that you need to use deluge code for. All of these workflows you can build without any deluge code at all, right? So let's first answer the fundamental question. What exactly is a workflow, right? A workflow is simply put a series of tasks that you need to do to accomplish a result, or let's say an end result, all right? So for me to go ahead and update the inventory, I need to get the order, I need to get payment, I need to send someone a confirmation, check whether the stock is available. So there are different types of tasks that need to be performed, but all of them need to be performed before you can get to the final result, right? On Creator, we basically have 4 types of workflows. And when you say type of workflow, I am also talking about what the trigger is, all right? So remember the word trigger, and remember that that trigger is associated to a workflow type, okay? So what I mean by that is when you actually go into the product to create a new workflow, you will be asked this question. When do you want to trigger your workflow, right? Your trigger for the workflow is nothing but the same as a type of workflow you're using, all right? So let's go back into the product, and let's see where you can actually find this screen. So let's go back and create a new workflow. So to create a new component, if you see this plus icon out here, click that, and you will be asked what component you need to create. So in this case, we are going to go ahead and create a workflow. And this is when you get the screen, where they ask you what type of trigger do you want to use, or basically when do you want this workflow to execute, right? And the answer to that is actually pretty easy. So let's go over the 4 types of workflows that we have. The first workflow is what we have is called a form workflow. A form workflow, as the name suggests, will run when something happens on the form, all right? So any workflow that you want to trigger, which is associated to a form, you will be using a form workflow. Now, a form workflow allows you to have these triggers at multiple points. So that means you could either choose to run a script on load of the form, you could choose to run a script on success, let's say when you have added data inside the form. Let's say data has been accepted, and then you want let's say the script trigger after data has been added into the form. Or even have these workflows run to hide or show fields on the form itself. So what you can actually build is a responsive form where based on a few of the values that you enter in the initial fields, the rest of the form really changes. These scripts can run at the field level on the form. They can run when the form loads. They can run when you submit the form. And they can also run just before you submit the form. So the difference between just before you submit the form and actually submit the form is when you click the submit button, we have a step called onValidate. And that is after you've clicked the submit button and before data actually gets added to your report, that is when the validate script runs. However, the onSuccess script, that it's called, will run when data has already been added to your report. So let's go back here and let's say I want to trigger a workflow while using the form. I'm going to click a form here. When you actually select the form that you want to create the workflow on, you decide what situations does that workflow trigger. So you have 4 options here that say created, created or edited and deleted. So creation means when data is added to the form for the first time, all right? Created or edited means a situation where you're encompassing both cases, where when you add data for the first time, or you go back to the report and actually edit the form. So if you edit the form, or you add data for the first time, and if you select a created or edited, the script will run for both cases. If you only want the script to run on the edit mode, which is only when you update the value of that record, you select the edited option. So very quickly, the difference between created or edited, and edited. If you add for the first time, you're doing it on create. If you go back to the report and edit it, you are actually going ahead and then editing the record, and that's when the script will run. If you select created or edited, the workflow will run on both situations, right? I think delete is pretty obvious, so you cannot delete from a form. You need to delete from a report. So let's just call this new workflow, and what I'm going to do very quickly is go ahead and create this workflow. So what we've looked at all this while is the triggers. So we have 4 types of triggers. One is a form, one is a schedule, an approval, and a payment. But what you can do is actually configure the action to the workflow. So you have 2 bits on a workflow. One is the trigger. The second is the action. So the first step is decide when you want the workflow to trigger. And on the action, you decide what should the workflow do, all right? So that's what a action basically refers to. And to create a new action, just click the Add New Action button, and that is when it's going to ask you what sort of action you want to create. And let's go back here. The second type of workflow that we have is called a schedule workflow. So a schedule workflow, the trigger for the workflow is at either a scheduled date and time, or it is at a particular frequency. So any sort of trigger that is time-based on your application will be a scheduled workflow, right? The third type of workflow that we have is something that we call an approval workflow, which often refers to having pieces of information move through different levels of hierarchy in an organization, and that is exactly what an approval workflow allows you to do. So if you have a record that needs to be approved by your manager and your manager's manager, and let's say your finance team, that's when you use an approval workflow. So an approval workflow is multi-level, and you can decide at any given point of time exactly how many people need to approve that and what the flow for that approval should be, right? The fourth type of workflow that we have is called a payment workflow, and as the name suggests, it's when you want to collect payments. So we have a few inbuilt payment gateways that are integrated with Creator already, so you do not need to write any code for this. All of these are no-code integrations, so you can actually very well go set up your payment gateway, create a form, and very quickly accept payments from a Creator workflow itself. So this is all about the triggers. This is about what can be used or when your workflow can be triggered. But let's talk a little bit about what can be done when you go ahead and choose to create your workflow. So when you create a workflow, you basically, once you have decided what trigger you're going to use, you come and define what that workflow will do, or what the actions associated to that workflow are. A trigger can be associated to multiple actions. Let's say when a form is submitted, you can choose to push that information to another service. You could choose to send an email to the person who filled out the form, or you could actually just go ahead and also add another entry in another form based on the data that was added on this one, right? So one trigger can actually be associated to multiple actions, and that's what you go ahead and do in the product. So out here, let's go ahead and quickly create a simple notification workflow. So what exactly is a notification workflow? As the name suggests, it is to go ahead and notify, let's say, someone whenever a record is added inside a form. So you could choose to send that notification as an email. You could choose to send that notification as an SMS, or even a mobile push notification. So if someone is using the Zoho Creator app, what you can do is whenever a record is added inside a form, you can choose to send a push notification to the admin or, let's say, another user based on this trigger itself. So to create a notification action, very, very clearly, just click the notification action type here. It'll ask you what action you want to do. So let's say I want to send an email, and it will go ahead and open this email screen up for me very quickly. Once you've figured out what sort of email you want to send, you can actually just go ahead and click Save. So out here, you can choose to actually insert any of the fields that you want, And we also have the ability for you to write an email using some sort of template that's there. Okay? But let's get back to the other type of actions that we have. Other than notifications, what we were talking about was a field action. A field action is basically when you need to modify fields on a form itself. So this is what I was telling you. So if you want to create a responsive form where you have different fields that are hidden or shown based on some value that you've added in the initial fields, that's when you use a field action. So the third type of action that we have is called a data access action. And very simply, as you can see from the symbol there, it allows you to move data around in your database. So what this basically means is whenever someone adds an entry into form number 1, I want that to create a corresponding, say, related record in form number 2, right? I can go ahead and very easily do that using the data access action here without actually having to write a single piece of code. So if you want to add a record to another form, you can just go ahead, click Add Record, select the form that you want to add that record to, and the corresponding fields will show up here. All you need to do is map those fields, which is decide which value from form 1 actually goes into which value for form 2. Right? That's what a data access action allows you to do. The last action that we have is something called an integration action. What Creator can integrate with? The answer is actually anything and everything on the internet. And the way that we do that is not through the no-code builder. You need to use script for that, right? There is some stuff that you can do with no-code. That's what I'm getting to. The question that people ask me is, what can Creator integrate with? What are the limits that Creator has in terms of integrations? The truth is there is no limit, because Creator has an open REST API. We have an XML API, and you can access every single field in your application using the API that's there. So if you want to either integrate with the legacy system, or if you want to integrate with the system that we do not have an integration with at the moment, you can go ahead and actually write that custom script using Deluge. So other than these integrations that we can do with the API, we have a few inbuilt integrations that you have with Creator, which is CRM, Recruit, Salesforce, and QuickBooks. And I will not forget to mention that every single integration that you want to have with Zoho Flow is available with Creator. So you can connect Zoho Flow and Creator, and that is the integration platform. So we're not really going to worry about building out these integrations within Creator any longer, because all of them are just available inside Zoho Flow. And Zoho Flow and Zoho Creator will actually be more tightly integrated in the Creator Plus suite. So you will actually be able to call a flow or generate a flow from within Creator itself. So to leave you with what we have for you is something that we call the app deck. The app deck is basically 50 pre-built applications that we have put out for you to use. And with every application, we have a video that's available that our marketing team has done to show you how each and every application was built. So if you're looking for a tutorial on how any of these apps were built, you can actually open the app and open the video side by side and build along. So I think that'll be the easiest way for you to start building in case you haven't actually been exposed to Creator before. And a lot of people have actually just customized the app deck, the apps on the app deck, and started using it. So apps on the app deck also serve as a starting point for you in case there is something specific that you are looking for, right? And with this, we come to the end of my session. Thank you very much. You've been a lovely audience.